everyone. Welcome back to I'm Silent No More. I am your host, Lynz Piper-Loomis. And I just got back from a incredible intensive week in Alabama with Association for the Recovery of Children for training and anti-trafficking efforts, to help rescue children from preventative intervention, aftercare, support care. So if that is something you're interested in, go to recoveryofchildren.org. I think it's .org, and there are still two more classes this year, and then there's already some for next year. Please be sure to join. Today, I have a guest that you all met and saw last week, Alex Pelbath. He is running for South Carolina District 1 for U.S. Congress. And this time, we're going to be talking about policies. We didn't have enough time to go through those policies last time, so we're going to get into the nitty gritty. And of course, most of you know, and if you don't know, Alex has my full support and endorsement for this seat. So to all of my listeners in South Carolina and even beyond, Nancy Mace has stepped out of this seat and she is running for governor. I endorsed Ralph Norman for that seat. But for this seat, I have chosen Alex because he is top notch. He has the experience in policies, budget. He has ran, I think I would say billions. He can correct me if I'm wrong here in a minute, but billions of dollars in defense budgets. And he'll talk, he talked a little bit about that last week. You can go back and catch part 1 on Rumble or on X. So thank you so much for tuning back in. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me back. Great to be here.
Awesome. I'm so thrilled. So I think you told me you managed and ran it was billions of dollars in the defense budget. Is that correct?
Yeah, right. Before Afghanistan, before I flew the last plane out of Afghanistan and led the Special Operations Unit. I was up at the Pentagon, and I had two significant jobs there. The first one was working in the Air Force Budget Office. The nickname of the job that I held was the checkbook. I was the Air Force's checkbook, balancing the budget, and it was the exact number was $811.1 billion.
Okay. I thought I remembered you saying that there. And then also I was at the debate. Well, it wasn't really a debate. It was a forum that Dorchester County and Berkeley County GOP put on, which I believe you smoked. I know I said my two favorites from there. Um, and I was blown away. Like the questions came from dues paying members, which I became a dues. I renewed my dues for Dorchester County that day. But it was interesting to hear all the different questions, and it was all policy based.
Yeah.
One thing that I think a lot of people, you as common sense, you're like, of course I'm not going to support Sharia. But I actually recorded one of your opponents and I posted it. And he jumped from this small little tiny like couple of words about Sharia and Islamic State, and then he jumped to a whole nother area. Mark Smith, he jumped to this whole other explanation about backing the blue and law enforcement and all of this. And many of us in the audience, we were just wondering, what in the world is he talking about? Because that's out of context. So not only did you listen clearly and carefully and follow directions, which is so huge, right? But you also gave meaty answers. So I wanted to kind of go back through some of those policies that you wanted to talk about. So let's dive into let's talk about this whole thing with immigration and I know the Save America Act that's on the Senate side, but I know there's a
Mhm.
lot of people that would want to know how you feel about that. And how would you handle um, the budgeting and the legislation on that for that? Let's start there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. To your point though about how people react in those events. I mean, I'm not surprised to hear that. A lot of these people, it's about talking points. They have talking points they want to say, and so I don't know, they just come out wherever the talking points come out. I've gotten that feedback before. Hey, thank you for following the directions and actually answering the question. And
Right.
my response to that would be, I didn't know there was another way to do it. Those of us who have never been in politics before, especially if you're in the military, you get asked a question, you answer the question. You're just very direct about what you think. So I don't think that's, I think that's just a very normal person way of doing it. How about that? I think that's what
Yeah.
normal people would just answer the question. So, so thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know it's a simple thing. In one of my classes, digital forensics classes, and we'll jump back in, but I have to follow line by line specific examples or the specific instructions. If I don't, I flunk the whole lab.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
common
yeah.
sense.
Not that way in politics. You can say whatever you want, apparently. But
I guess
yeah,
so. Anyways, go
yeah,
ahead, jump
yeah.
in.
So yeah, so what immigration, the Save America Act is part of that, obviously. But if we're talking just specifically about immigration from, let's just talk about this from a big picture standpoint. And you going back to my background, I have a lot of background in policy and strategy. And one of the things I say on stage that, in a short amount of time, I don't get to expound upon that I would like to right here is strategy informs policy, policy informs the budget. So in order to make policy, you have to know what the end goal of the policy is. That's where strategy comes in, right? Hey, here's our goal with this. With immigration, we have a goal of shutting down the borders for many reasons. So we're going to then implement policy that supports that goal. And what's so important about this position running for United States Congress is that Congress controls the purse strings. So we're going to be the ones passing the budget, passing the law on how to spend money. And so if we don't understand those policies, we can't appropriately allocate dollars to them, if that makes sense to everybody. So I think this is one of the reasons we have $38 trillion in debt, is because we have members of Congress who don't know what they're doing. They don't understand policy and strategy at that level. And so I think it's incredibly important for the race that we're running. And so when it comes to immigration, if we're talking the strategy, policy, budgeting, those three things going together, the strategy is not to use the name of the act itself, but it is to save America. So we know we've had 10 to 20 million people illegally cross the border just under the Biden administration. And so many things come from that. So many negative things for America. I think all of us on the Republican side realize that we are a nation of immigrants. We don't hate immigrants. We don't hate immigration. What we hate is people breaking the law with no punitive action. That bothers us. Because we're a nation of immigrants, I think we talked this the last time on your show. My family escaped from communist Hungary in 1956. My grandparents spent a year in a refugee camp waiting their turn to come to America. And so the idea that you could just illegally cross our borders and now you get to go to the front of the line, that bothers me. I know that bothers a lot of Americans. So fundamentally, we're a nation of laws. Let's obey the law. But what what are the negative ramifications of those 10 to 20 million illegal people coming into this country? Well, we have um, a crisis with affordability and housing right now. That's part of it. The whole entire affordability issue. This is part of it because they're not living here for free. They're getting free healthcare. If anybody who's ever gone to emergency room, they know you're in there waiting for hours upon hours upon hours to be seen. And my wife is an ER professional. She's a PA who spent over a decade working in emergency rooms. And here's the deal: if you show up to an ER, insurance or no insurance, you get treated. If you're an illegal alien and you showed up to an emergency room, you're getting treated. So who's paying that bill? We are. The rest of Americans are. So this absolutely contributes to the affordability crisis we have. Same thing with housing. They're not all living on the streets. There are social programs that are putting them in housing. We're paying that bill as well. And so it just affects so many things. And that's, not even getting into the criminal illegals. I think that's the low hanging fruit. That's absolutely, we see the violence that a lot of them commit. That, of course, we're getting after. But I think even just on the more innocent side, it's just tax paying Americans are bearing the burden of these 20 million illegal immigrants being in our country. And that's sort of what we're against. And so, what the talking point that I love about immigration is that this isn't, being strict on immigration right now isn't something that we want to do as a nation of immigrants. It's something that we have to do, and we have no choice. That the Democrats gave us this horrible problem that we are now trying to solve on behalf of Americans. Like this entire thing. Anybody who doesn't like a strict stance on immigration should be angry at the Democrats for creating this problem in the first place that we now have to fix. Um, so that's my general stance on immigration. Why I'm so firm on this right now anti-immigration stance that we have to take and tough anti-immigration policies. And there's one other very specific aspect of it, and this brings in the SAVE Act. We know that they're voting. There's two parts to it. One, we know there's illegal voting happening. We know
Yeah.
it. Like it's factual data at this point.
Yep.
Number two, the census. So when they do a census and they start counting heads for voting, they're counting heads. They're not just counting citizens. And
Mhm.
so 20 million illegal immigrants who are all could say that they vote Democrat would change the census, and that would obviously change the makeup of congressional districts. So there are some massive implications, and Democrats know it. Why in the world would you not want to pass voter ID? Like 80% of America, including, this includes Democrats, want voter ID laws, some version of voter ID laws. There's only one reason you don't want voter ID laws. It's if you know it's going to cost you votes. And that's the Democrat stance right now is they're going to push so hard against this because they're going to start losing more and more elections if the illegal immigrants aren't allowed to vote.
There was to your point about this, I can't remember the young lady's name. The producer might remember, Michael might remember, but there was a young lady I saw the video this morning, and she goes around into public places regarding First Amendment rights, asking people questions. She's been sued in Florida, or she sued back in Florida when she was, you know, asked to leave a public area. I cannot remember her name, but anyways, I saw this place where this guy was. They were anti-ICE, anti all of this stuff, and she was there. It was a public area, and he said, "You need to leave. This is a protected area." She's like, "Oh, you mean you have secure borders?"
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can't remember her name, but
Caitlin
it
Bennett.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Caitlin Bennett. It was epic. I saw that, and she just kept hammering. He was
Yeah.
speechless. It
Yeah,
was
I do.
great.
That's
I
right.
loved
Wait.
it.
So you do agree in borders? Yeah, that was
It
fantastic.
was it was so good. But
Yeah.
really, honestly, when you use that rhetoric back at them in
Yeah.
that type of situation, they're speechless. It's like, okay, just like you have to have an ID to get your
Yeah.
license. You have to have an ID to drive. You have to have for alcohol, all these different things to go into the military. You have to be. I don't know if you have to have a formal driver's license, but you still have to have identification,
You have
right?
to have ID for everything in this country. This isn't a
So
controversial
it's
issue.
like, come
ID for
on.
everything, but
Yeah.
to suddenly to vote, yeah, yeah. We know, and Republicans talking to Republicans, we know this. It's not. It's such a common sense thing. And one of the things I love about being a Republican these days is that we are the party of common sense. We are the party of facts. We're the party of science. And we're the party of accountability. And that's why we vote the way that we do. And those are very simple things. Those four things that I just mentioned right there should be apolitical, right? Accountability, facts, science.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's not apolitical. It is political now, and those are the hallmarks of being a Republican.
This is so true. So I'm going to dive into a really testy area, which
Sure.
we talked a little bit about education, and I know we've talked offline about some of this stuff, and we got into a little bit. And any policies that you want to talk about, just dive in. But I wanted to bring this back because just in South Carolina, not too long ago, there was this whole trans thing in education again, and this should not be a thing. Like we have Clemson, these great schools. I mean, some of them are in woke indoctrination, I know that, but
Mhm.
federal funding is going into these programs. So how do you feel about removing funding for schools that will not adhere? I mean, I want to see the Department of Education completely abolished. Personally, I said
Yeah.
that when I was running. But how do you feel about getting that funding removed if they can't follow the law?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the answer to your question there is very simple. Yeah, you don't. That's the way you hold agencies and organizations accountable at the federal level. is most of them are being supported by federal dollars. And so, yeah, if you don't support the law, if you don't do, and when we're talking about federal dollars, we're talking about taxpayer dollars. So if you don't do what the taxpayers expect you to do with this money, the money gets withheld. That is the, how you incentivize organizations from following. So I think that's a really easy place to get after it, at least to force some of these organizations to do what they're supposed to do. And it's sort of an easy yes to agree to that. I think there are some other things that are more challenging. When it comes to this topic, just in general, what's wrong with education in America? To me, is we've taken the role of the family almost completely out of it. And there is no easy solution, but what we do know is, one, I believe in states' rights. States have the ability to choose, and it's constitutional. It's what the Constitution says. And I believe that the role of the family is so incredibly important, maybe more important today than it ever has been. And so, whatever we can do to make sure families are involved in their kids' education, I think is the way to solve part of this issue. Sort of a separate issue. I agree with defunding or getting rid of the Department of Education. That's sort of a larger budget talk, which is, when we have $38 trillion in debt, we have to make massive cuts. Saving millions of dollars against 38 trillion doesn't move the needle. When you have 38 trillion in debt, you have to be cutting billions of dollars to get after it. And so, wholesale cuts like Department of Education, I'm all for that as well. As long as that, then we can redirect responsibility and authority down to the parents. Parents should always have a role to play and a say in how their children are being educated.
Yeah.
And this is not what we're seeing, even in local school districts, and we see it here, even in the Low Country, in the first congressional district. So that wokeness is everywhere. We have in our public libraries some texts. I've seen these in the library. These texts that they are pornographic, not even borderline. They are. They just are. And there's an entire group on the left that is pushing for that. Yet a parent, and we've seen all these videos, a parent objects to a book in their children's school library, so takes it to the library board and starts to read the text from the book, and they get silenced because it's inappropriate to be read in the school board, but it's available to their children. So this
Mhm.
is still happening. So that the fact that parents have so little authority over their children's education, to me, is one of the biggest problems in America.
Yeah, that's really powerful. We're going to take just a really quick break, y'all, and then we're going to come back because I want to hear how you want to cut this budget and solve, this huge problem we have
Yeah.
here in America. We'll be right back after the break.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining me for this real quick break. I want to tell you about America's most secure mobile network. Now, I'm not going to tell you about something that I am not already using. Efani, EFANI.com/Lynz. And the reason why this is America's most secure mobile network is that the Efani Safe Plan actually offers a cybersecurity focused mobile service protecting. It says high risk individuals, but now my whole family is using this plan, and a lot of people near and dear to me, people joining, in support of this podcast and my investigative work. They're actually joining this because they realize that I am always looking at ways to protect not just my identity, but also protect things that matter most to me. So, um, secure communication, whether it's through Signal or through email or pictures of my family. But what about crypto? Are you a crypto investor? What about your banking? What about the things that you do on a day-to-day basis? They this plan, this safe plan, doesn't just protect high-risk individuals against mobile hacks. But they do provide, Efani provides a best in class protection with 11 layers of proprietary authentication. And guess what? It's backed by a $5 million insurance policy. Now, I actually interviewed one of the individuals who had a SIM swap attack, and it's in my Rumble channel. You can go back and listen to him. His name is Mark. But this plan, excuse me, protects executives from top organizations all the way to your average everyday American. And the reason that they created Efani was because the FBI reported just last year over 5.6 times more an increase in SIM swap scams. Over 80% of the attempts, over 80% of the attempts to get into a phone account are successful. Hackers can drain your bank account and take over your email and social media for extortion. Tens of thousands of people lose their life savings and reputation every day. So, this isn't just endorsed by me, but it's endorsed by others. So go to ifani.com/Lynz, type in my name, Lynz, and you'll get a discount, unlimited talk, text, and data. So thank you so much for helping support the work I'm doing, Ifani. God bless.
Hey, welcome back. I know that's a little bit of a long one, but I wanted you guys to understand what's going on with your security, because you need to do everything you can to protect your data, social media, all of that. I've been hacked and it's not fun. All right, so back to this budget crisis that we have here in America. Tell me, since this is you're an expert in this area, how would you solve this crisis that we see with
Yeah,
policy?
so, solving it's a steep deal. So yeah, a couple things. $38 trillion in debt we have, right? And we can't even afford the interest on that debt. That's what's happening right now. And then we have a separate problem, which is GDP. GDP, which is gross domestic product. It's how we measure the size of our economy. And think of it like debt to income is what that is. So it's not just that we have 38 trillion in debt. We have a $10 trillion deficit. I mean, that's how far behind we are on this. So two things we have to do is tackle the trillion in debt, and there's, I think, some low hanging fruit there as well, if you're a Republican anyway, which is fraud, waste, and abuse. There is so much fraud, waste, and abuse in the government going on. We see it everywhere. We see it happening all over the country. Of course, the Democrats are fighting this on this, but these are federal dollars being spent on programs that we know are going towards fraudulent um, activities in a lot of different states. So let's tackle that. Here's one thing that nobody talks about. If somebody's committing fraud, like what we saw in Minnesota with the daycare centers and stuff like that, and what Nick Shirley's uncovering in California right now, we're going after these organizations that are committing fraud. Absolutely, we should do that. Here's one other step that should be taken. We should be holding accountable the government organizations that are responsible for handing out that money. So when we entrust a government organization with the responsibility of evaluating which organizations get taxpayer dollars, then those people should be held accountable when they screw that up. And we're not doing that at all. If I had done what a lot of these organizations are doing while I was in the military, I would have been fired from my job. If you're that irresponsible. They don't just go to get the money back that was misspent, but then they fire the person who's responsible for spending that money. So that is absolutely something that should be implemented. There should be a very high standard, a very high bar. It should be so hard to get taxpayer dollars. Like, you should have to prove your worth over and over and over again. So I would love to see that accountability on the organizations responsible for handing out those fraudulent dollars. I think that would solve a lot of it, as a matter of fact. And then we're talking wholesale cuts to things like this. And I'll just give you one personal example from what I saw in budgeting is, look, the Air Force has aircraft that we're paying for that we don't want, that the Air Force does not want. The Air Force is paying for airplanes right now that the Air Force does not want and does not need. And the reason we're doing that is because certain members of Congress will not let us get rid of those airplanes. And it's usually because those airplanes are in some congressman's or congresswoman's district, and they don't want to be seen as cutting anything. So we're just wasting millions and millions and millions of dollars per year on equipment that the military does not want. That's a different type of waste and abuse right there that we need to go after. So I've obviously seen that on the inside and what that looks like. And then, I'll give you the biggest takeaway I had from working budgets. You want to know what somebody values, truly values? Look where they spend their money. Everybody talks a big game, but unless you're actually putting dollars behind something, it's not really a priority for you. And that cuts both ways. One, if you're not putting dollars behind something, it's not a priority. If you are putting dollars behind it and it's some nefarious activity, that also displays what your priorities are. And so I want to bring that right back home to the first congressional district here. We have so many issues here when it comes to affordability and infrastructure in the low country. We feel it's probably the number one thing that I hear when I'm out on the campaign trail is We have deteriorating roads, deteriorating bridges. Traffic is getting worse literally by the day.
Yep.
And at the same time, we have the highest taxes of any state in the Southeast.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
How is that possible? How could we be paying more taxes than our neighbors and yet still have all of these problems? Well, it's because our lawmakers in South Carolina do not value the things that we value. You want to know what they value? Look where they spend their money. It is not on roads and bridges and infrastructure and traffic and smart strategic development. And so here's what I plan to do. One of my commitments to the Low Country when I get to DC is forget about asking the state to solve this problem. They can't do it. And I'm running against people who have helped create this problem over the last few years. And there's essentially what they're saying now on the campaign trail is, yes, I know we have all these problems and I couldn't fix it at my level. But hey, if you give me a promotion, when I get to DC, I will suddenly solve all these problems.
I know. I
That
heard Mark Smith say that.
it's
I
ludicrous to me
listen.
that people are running on that, you know?
Yeah.
Fix the problem here. You have the money. This is like literally your job. Like you should be solving this problem. Or not. Sorry, can't do it.
Bingo.
Here's what I do want to bring to everybody's attention though.
Yeah.
So one of the problems with the $38 trillion in debt is everybody has special interests. Everybody has pet programs and earmarks, and we're just spending money everywhere else. What I'm about to say is not that. You, we should only be spending federal dollars on things that benefit the United States of America, right? If that was like the bar, like, hey, we're only going to spend taxpayer dollars on something that benefits the country, benefits taxpayers, we'd go a long way to solving our budget problems. So look at us here in the first congressional district. We have down in Beaufort, Marine Corps Air Station Beaufort. What Beaufort does for this district, by the way, tremendous. How much we rely on and need Beaufort for the district, and how often they're just forgotten, the Beaufort Hilton Head area. But Beaufort, as we have Marine Corps Air Station Beaufort, we have Paris Island. Move up the coastline, we have Joint Base Charleston, the Air Force Base where I was stationed. We have the Naval Weapons Station. We're about to have the largest Coast Guard base in America. And of course, we have the port, the fastest growing port on the East Coast. What we here in the first congressional district do for the United States of America is of tremendous value. What the first congressional district does for our country is of tremendous value. And because of that, America should be investing in the first congressional district. So I know we're all proud of all those things and they bring a lot of jobs and it helps our economy, but it also brings all of those challenges we just had, the infrastructure challenges we have. That's people moving here for those jobs. That's the port causes a lot of traffic. I mean, it's insane that we built this port and we didn't simultaneously build a way to get things to and from the port. Think about that. Like, we have 18 wheelers driving on the same roads as school buses in the morning. What good is the port if you can't get anything in and out of the port?
Exactly.
And we this is the lack of any type of strategic plan that went into the development of this. When we talk infrastructure, that's really what I'm talking about, a strategic plan for infrastructure. It would be like building a runway and not building a terminal or a place to park the airplanes. Great, you can fly airplanes in and out, but passengers can't get on and off. I mean, that's essentially what we did with the port. It's crazy. And so
Why
here's how
you
we
said
solve.
you need strategy. Strategy informs policy.
There you go. Strategy informs policy, policy informs the budget. So look what we in the first congressional district do for our nation. It's
Yeah,
a lot. And yet
absolutely.
right now, we are bearing the burden. We are paying the cost of all of that. And so there should be federal dollars allocated to help solve some of these infrastructure problems we have, specifically, very specifically, because of what we do for the country. So that's very different from special projects and earmarks. We are a benefit to the country. We are providing a vast amount of value for our nation. Our nation should be investing in us and helping us solve some of these infrastructure challenges. And the last point of that, why this is so important, is there are national security concerns with this. So we've all experienced when we have an issue on one of the bridges, it shuts down everything.
Yep.
Hilton Head Island has one bridge down there. If that bridge goes down, if the hurricane comes in, all those people are trapped. There's like national security concerns with some of these issues that we have here. And if
Yeah.
and if you are a terrorist and you want to disrupt America, you don't go attack the port. You just go attack I-26, the 526 I-26 interchange. And suddenly our port is worthless because you can't get anything out of it. You can't get anything to the ships and you can't get anything off the ships. I mean,
Yeah.
there are national level security concerns with these infrastructure challenges we have. And so I plan to go fight for the first congressional district in DC to make sure that we are appropriately funded to tackle all of those issues.
That was a really good answer and very expansive. I mean, it's detailed. It's not. Yeah, I'm just not going to go back to the form. I'm so thankful that Dorchester and Berkeley County put that on.
Yeah, it
It
was
was
such a great
awesome.
event. They did a great job.
So the next area that I know we didn't really get a chance to talk about, oh, there's actually quite a few policy areas. So what is another policy area that you're passionate about? I know we talked about military and veterans, and we talked about some other things that we didn't get to go deep into. But what is something that you really want, like maybe would be another part of your projects while you're in office, in addition to the budget?
Yeah, well, I'll go to, I would say, the most important thing that we're up against, and this is, when I say we, I mean all of us conservative Republicans, all of us in the first congressional district, and there's, I just think there's a bigger fight going on in America right now. And this is, people ask me back to why I decided to run, and I think I said this last time. My experience in Afghanistan with what Biden and the Democrats gave us there, I think was preventable, and it was a terrible experience. But I think what we're facing from the left today is so much more dangerous to America. We're watching this unfold. We're watching the Democrat playbook right now, the left playbook unfold all across America. And frankly, I feel bad for America loving Democrats, right? There's plenty of Democrats who served in the military with me. I'm very close to a lot of these people. I happen to have a guy, he's one of my brothers. We went to war together. He's my brother. He just happens to be a Democrat, but he loves America the same way I do. And I can't imagine being in his position, watching these extreme leftists take over their party. But they have. And this is what we're up against. We just saw another assassination attempt on the president. We have Mamdani in New York. We have Spanbarger in Virginia, who ran as a moderate and is anything but a moderate, very clearly, right? This deceitful tactic they're now pushing on us. And then the attempt on the president's life. And all of this is what we're seeing from the mainstream Democratic Party today, the left, is them trying to make excuse. They're first of all embracing. They embraced Mamdani. Mamdani was endorsed by Barack Obama and Hakeem Jeffries, right? Barack Obama and Mamdani just did like some little reading to elementary schools together. This isn't. He's not like some one-off crazy guy in New York ruining a city. What the Democrats are telling us is that's the future that they want for America. If they're going to come out and endorse him and sit by his side and push this guy on the country, they're saying, yes, that is our desire for America. And Obama just made an excuse for the assassination attempt on President Trump the other night. He came out and said, "Oh, we don't know the shooter's motives yet." Yes, we do. He wrote a manifesto. We know it. He named President Trump in this manifesto. So that fight, I think, against that we're up against on the right is so incredibly important right now. This is why this election in 2026 matters. We have to, and this is you and me and everybody else who cares about this, the people watching, we have to get people off their couches to go vote in 2026. This election right now, I think, matters more than 2024 did. Like we as a nation gave President Trump a mandate to fix so many of the issues in America and to go to battle against this leftist agenda. We need to double down on that mandate right now in 2026. We need to make sure that we're not just electing Republicans, that we are electing the right Republicans. Like this I think is the most important issue that we're facing in DC, is going to war against this extremist left agenda that hates America, wants to destroy the Constitution, and certainly wants to destroy all the conservative values upon which the country was built and that we care so deeply about here in the Low Country.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying all of the Democrats, everyone, just to clarify,
No,
because
me either. Me either. Not all
but
the Democrats.
but what the actual, thing you're talking about is it's domestic terrorism, because they're partnering with radical Islam. Oh, I call the Islamic State because they're not assimilating into America. It's you've got cultural jihad happening. You've got other, they're they're trying to take over. And these extremists on the left, and we do have some on the right that are partnering because they're not doing anything. I'm not saying all Republicans, again, some, but they're partnering together to allow this horrible terrorism
Yeah.
on American soil, and makes me so
Hmm.
mad because people like yourself, my husband, and others fought for this country, and it's like these people are putting their middle fingers up, and it's just
Yeah,
we
they are.
we can't tolerate.
Yeah, go back to what I said before. I feel bad for the patriotic, America-loving Democrats. They are being completely silenced and shunned by their own party. That because somehow, if you want to stand up against Sharia law, somehow makes you racist, right? These people you said, you just mentioned it. They're not assimilating. That's it. We welcome we welcome legal immigrants into this country, but we do expect you to assimilate. You move here to take advantage of capitalism and the values that this country and the opportunities this country provides you. And what I learned about the American dream, we got into a little bit of my background growing up was, I was the first person in my family ever to go to college, and the first person with my last name to get a college degree. Since then, we've had a few more. It's awesome, but we didn't. We fought for everything that we earned. In my case, literally. But what I learned about the American dream through that experience is that you get out of this country what you put into it. You get out what you put in. You work hard for this. You want the American dream. You have to work for it, but the opportunities are there, and that's not the case on the left anymore. It's not what socialism is. That's not what the agenda is. Socialist agenda is, I don't want to work. I want all those things, and I don't want to work for it. I want somebody else to be to be funding my lifestyle, right? Take from the average person, take from you and I, and all the patriotic taxpayers here in the first congressional district, and give it to people who aren't patriotic, who hate America, right? That's the agenda from the left, and it's um, look, it is a real fight. It is a real battle. The fact that we got asked the Sharia law question, I said this in my response. What has happened to America that we even asked the question, should Sharia law be allowed? 10 years ago, 20 years ago, no way would anybody even dare to ask that question, because it's so insane.
Yeah,
But it's here, and we have to acknowledge it. We Republicans have to acknowledge that battle is at our doorsteps. And
yeah,
all of us better get up and fight. And the way that we fight is we go to the polls in November. First in June, on June 9th, go vote on June 9th. Make sure you're voting for a Republican who's gonna fight for you. Make sure we're picking the right Republican, especially in this seat, right?
yeah,
If we've seen what the Democrats are doing here, how much money they're already spending to try to flip this seat, the candidate that they brought in to try to win this seat, they are taking it very seriously. If we don't take it as seriously as they are, we are in big, big trouble. So
yeah,
June 9th, make sure we're electing the right Republican. Make sure you're going down there and voting for me. I need you to vote for me. I need you guys to not just vote for me, but get your friends and neighbors off the couch to make sure to go to the polls. Right? When
absolutely.
people turn out, we're going to win, and I am the right candidate to fight for South Carolina, to fight for the Low Country, and against that real enemy we have that is encroaching upon conservative values from the left. It's here. The battle's here.
Yeah, 100%. We're going to take one more really quick break, and then we're going to come back and finish talking a little bit more about policy. And of course, you're welcome back anytime. But we're going to take this real quick break.
Hey, it's Josh with Val and Vine Jewelry. We're passing the USS Yorktown right here. At Val and Vine Jewelry, we are extremely grateful for the people who have served this nation. To say thank you, at Val and Vine, we gift every active duty military member with the diamond for their engagement ring. So if that's you, all you got to do is pay for this setting, and to say thank you for your service to this nation, we'll gift you with the diamond up to 3.5 carats. Thank you for your service to this great nation, the greatest nation on the planet.
Guys, I just want to thank you. This is a new sponsor. He actually made my logo when I ran for Congress, and his whole family was deeply involved with my campaign. And so if that is you, if you are not active duty military, and you are wanting to check out and get a consultation, the consultation's free. And then you can type in if or use my name, Lynz, Lynz, and get 10% off of your order for your bride to be. All right, guys. Welcome back, Alex. I want to, get back into this policy. Um, the other thing that we've really struggled with in our state and in our district now, Congresswoman Nancy Mace has done a great job. I know anytime I've reached out to her office, she's been very helpful. But at large, I'm not just saying, we have a massive issue supporting our veterans. I mean, we have so many that, are homeless, can't get their, so many different things. I did some outreach. I worked in outreach for veterans. I've took care of my husband as a caregiver for him for years. He's walking now, praise God. But there is when we moved here over 10 years ago, I was enrolled in the caregiver program at the time. Again, he was in a wheelchair, wasn't walking, and other caregivers in the program that were enrolled, 90, I think it was 99% of those caregivers were cut from the program. And it was horrific because as you with people you've served with, some spouses who are caring or loved ones for their loved one, they can't get out there and get a job at that time. There's certain things that they can't do. So there was just this huge gap that took place. And then I've just fighting for what these veterans are, what you're due for injuries, wheelchairs. I had people who I had to fight for my husband for his wheelchair. He had cancer, was scheduled for surgery. It was service connected and they canceled at last minute. We had to do private pay. It was a disaster. And I mean, I'm not trying to bring it back there, but this is a common thing. So how would you change like that situation as a veteran yourself, having served in the military? How would you change things in policy there?
Yeah, obviously something I care a lot about. But a couple ways very specifically. One, I'm going to circle back to this um, because it's important, and it's a little bit, it's sort of back to policy about infrastructure and budgeting and funding, and why it's so important that matters to this issue very specifically. Big picture wise, here's what I would encourage every individual to do, because this is a big problem. Donate to these organizations. There are so many nonprofit organizations that are doing amazing things right here in the Low Country. One of my favorites is an organization called OPFOB, Operation FOB. FOB stands for Forward Operating Base, and so this is an organization down again in the Beaufort area, doing amazing things for veterans. They're part of the fight against veteran suicide, which is still 22 a day and growing. I mean, we're not even making a dent in there. But what this organization specifically does is it tries to get after veteran suicide before our veterans get to that point where they're considering it. And so go look into OpFob. It's amazing what they're doing. What I would like to see is more federal involvement in these organizations. If the federal government can hand out millions of dollars to the Leering Center in Minnesota, to these corrupt, fraudulent organizations who are asking for money to, obviously it's fraudulent, but even the premise behind that is like these daycare centers or these adult care centers. I want to see this level of involvement from the federal government into these veteran programs should also be happening. The barriers to entry there should not be as challenging as it is. Most of these, they're all nonprofits, and they exist on the generosity of people. So I would love to see more federal involvement. And that is, once again, we are talking about, this isn't something for nothing. This is a value to the United States of America. We're talking about people who have served their community, who have served the state, or who have served the country. Therefore, the country should be investing in them. Like that is how it should always work when it comes to budgeting is the federal government takes care of the things that take care of the federal government, right? That's how anything should work, honestly. So I would like to see that very specifically. And then circling back to some of the infrastructure challenges. So what we see here, I mentioned all those military bases we have in the first congressional district. Well, anybody who served this, and I'm going to add two others. I'm going to add first responders and our police department to this. As I've talked to firefighters, I've talked to the firefighters, many of them, some of their union reps, about this very specific thing. You want to serve in a fire department? Look, we know everybody who serves in the military and the police department, the firefighters, are all underpaid. Okay,
Yeah.
people don't do those jobs to get rich. They do it because there's a call to service on their lives, and so they're serving. We already know everybody's underpaid. Well, now that we have these infrastructure challenges in the first congressional district right here, is we're watching these folks have to commute an hour to work every
Yeah.
day. And it's an hour to work because one, they can't afford that housing affordability issues we have around here are so crazy they have to move further away. And then that on top of that, there's so much traffic for them to move. So one of those two things has to change. We have to find a way to better that environment so that all of these people who are serving our community or serving the country around here aren't aren't just dealing with uh, this type of traffic and pay issues. And in the military we have some like cost of living adjustments that we can make. That should be happening too. I would love to reevaluate the cost of living adjustments for the first congressional district for all these people who are serving. There should be pay adjustments based on what they're having to experience. And that just doesn't happen fast enough. So I think there are some very specific policies we can get after. So we help solve the traffic issues, the infrastructure issues here. Then we don't necessarily have the housing challenges that so many of our military and first responders are. If you're serving in the military and you're 23 years old and you have a young family, you shouldn't be driving an hour to go to work, to go serve your country. There's got to be a better way for us to do that. And the same goes for education for all these families. I know that's something very, very specific too. So I would love to see, and I haven't even touched on the VA. Okay, so we said all those things, and I haven't even touched on the VA. So there's a better way to do the VA. I've experienced this. Okay, I'm retired military myself. I've had to go through some of the VA processes, and I'll tell you, we got to do a better job in the VA. I will determinedly work to better the VA for all of our veterans here. And I know that we're doing a lot of good things in the first congressional district. That it's happening here. Is we have some great facilities here. We can continue to fund those at a level that's going to make it better for our veterans. So all of those things, those are all money type of issues that we
Yeah.
can solve. One from the human level, from all of us continuing to support these veterans organizations, and two, getting our government more involved to not just fund the programs, but then appropriately fund the infrastructure challenges so that the lifestyle these folks are living encourages them to stay. And that's really what it comes down to. When we make it hard to serve, people stop serving. It shouldn't be so hard to serve your country.
This is true. Well, I'm so thankful that you were able to hop on today. And I know another organization I just want to make sure I give a quick shout out to is Tri County Veteran Support Network. They do an amazing job as well. And I think they just opened up some type of housing project. So be sure to try, catch that. And then the one that you said, Operation Fob or Op Fob, I think you
Op
said.
fob, yeah,
Op
yeah,
Fob, sorry. But anyways, thank you so much for joining me here today. What is your website? And any closing remarks?
yeah. Pelbathforcongress.com. And look, we're 30 days out or something like that from early voting. I mean, we're getting really, really close. So Pelbathforcongress.com. And look, if you want to help the campaign, we're at that point where we need the manpower. Like that's how these campaigns, they're won on the ground. And so we're building an army to go win it on the ground. So if you'd like to join Pelbathforcongress.com, you can go right on the website and sign up there. And then of course follow on all the socials. That always helps too. Following and sharing and liking on the socials. So Pelbath for Congress on Facebook, Pelbath for SC on Instagram, and I respond to DMs. So if you want to send me a DM on any of the socials, I'll respond back directly.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me. And until next week, guys, make sure you go check out